Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to share with you a deeply personal story about how a small, unexpected act of kindness from my neighbor changed the way I view the world around me. It all started on a gloomy, rainy day, a day when everything seemed to be going wrong. But what happened next was something I never expected. It reminded me that kindness, even the smallest, quietest kind, can be powerful beyond words. So, grab a comfy seat and listen closely. I promise this story will touch your heart. We all have those days that seem doomed from the moment they begin. You open your eyes and something in your gut tells you it's going to be a rough one. That Tuesday was exactly like that for me. It started with my alarm clock deciding not to do its one job. I overslept by nearly an hour. I had a Zoom meeting I barely made, rushed through dressing, and left home with wet hair and no breakfast. As I ran to the bus stop, I watched the express bus, my usual one, pull away just as I reached the curb. That's when I knew, this day had teeth. Work was no better. Emails piling up, meetings running long, my manager in a mood I wouldn't wish on anyone. I spilled coffee on my blouse around 10 a.m. and had to sit through 3 meetings with a stain on my chest that screamed for attention. My computer froze during a report submission. My patience wore thin by noon. And the weather? Let's talk about that. The weather app had promised clear skies. Blue, sunny, friendly weather. But as I glanced out the office window mid-afternoon, the sky was anything but. Thick clouds gathered like a storm was brewing, and sure enough, by the time I left work, the rain was coming down hard. Not a light drizzle. It was the kind of rain that soaks through your socks, sneaks under your collar, and makes you curse the walk home. Of course, I didn't have an umbrella. As I trudged through puddles, I stopped at the grocery store. I thought, maybe if I get some essentials, milk, eggs, bread, it'll feel like I accomplished something. I grabbed a few items, stuffed them into a single paper bag, and left. I didn't double bag, didn't think twice. My only goal was to make it to my front door. And that's when everything unraveled. What happened next wasn't dramatic. There was no car crash, no huge confrontation. It was quieter than that. But sometimes, it's the quiet breakdowns that hit the hardest. Because when I turned the corner onto my porch, cold, wet, and exhausted, that's when the paper bag gave out. And everything, eggs, milk, berries, fell apart, right in front of me. I remember the sound before anything else. A soft rip. Not loud, not dramatic, just enough to signal something had gone wrong. I looked down just in time to see the bottom of the paper bag give way. The eggs were the first to go. They cracked against the concrete steps, yolks bleeding across the wet surface like sad little sunbursts. The milk rolled away like it was trying to escape the scene, hit the ground hard, and exploded in a messy white splash. My blueberries scattered, bouncing down the steps, rolling into the street like marbles. Bread? Soaked through. Done for. I froze. Rain kept falling, harder now. My jacket was useless, already soaked through. My shoes squished with each movement. I was standing in the middle of the mess, my arms still frozen in the shape of holding a bag that wasn't there anymore. And for a second, I didn't move. I couldn't. It wasn't just the groceries. It wasn't just the rain. It was everything. The bad morning. The pressure at work. The loneliness I'd been pushing to the side. It all hit me at once, like a quiet emotional flood. And there I was, on my own front steps, looking like someone who had finally reached the end of their rope. My phone was dead. My keys were buried somewhere in the bottom of my soaked bag. And I didn't even have the energy to curse the sky. I just stood there. People passed by with umbrellas, moving quickly, heads down. I don't blame them, they were just trying to get home, same as me. But not a single one stopped. Not even a glance. I've never felt more invisible. And then, out of the blur of rain and exhaustion, I heard it. A voice. "You okay over there?" At first, I thought I imagined it. But when I looked up, I saw him, standing under the awning of apartment 2B. Mr. Jenkins. My neighbor. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't pitying. He was just watching me. Like he saw me. Really saw me. In that moment, his voice cut through everything. The rain, the shame, the exhaustion. "You okay over there?" And suddenly, I wasn't invisible anymore. I turned slowly, blinking rain out of my eyes. And there he was. Mr. Jenkins. He stood under the awning of his apartment door, holding a green umbrella. Tall, slightly hunched, probably in his 70s. Always neat. Always quiet. The kind of man who wears sweaters year-round and calls everyone ma'am or sir even if you're decades younger. I'd lived in that building for almost a year, and while we'd shared a few nods in the hallway or a polite good morning at the mailboxes, we'd never really spoken. He was one of those neighbors who faded into the background of your day-to-day life. But that day, on that cold, wet, miserable Tuesday, he didn't fade. He stepped forward. Without a word, he opened his umbrella, walked down his steps, and came toward me. The sidewalk was slick, rain pounding down. His shoes had to be soaked. But he didn't hesitate. He didn't ask what happened. Didn't make a comment about the mess or the weather. He didn't offer some cliché like, "Tough day, huh?" He just knelt beside me and began picking up groceries. The bread was ruined. The eggs, gone. But he salvaged what he could. 2 apples, a crushed but sealed box of pasta, a can of soup that had rolled under a bush. He handed them to me, one by one, never looking away. "Come inside," he said, voice low but steady. "Let's get you out of the rain." Something about the way he said it, the gentleness in his tone, the simplicity of the gesture, made it impossible to refuse. I didn't even question it. I didn't say no. I just nodded. We walked together toward his apartment. He held the umbrella so it covered me more than him. I glanced sideways at him. He wasn't watching me like a project. He wasn't curious or nosy. He just cared. And in a world that had, for most of that day, felt indifferent and cold, that quiet care hit me like warmth after a long freeze. By the time we stepped inside, I wasn't thinking about the groceries anymore. I was thinking about how rare it is to be seen without having to ask. The moment I stepped into Mr. Jenkins's apartment, it was like walking into another world. It was small, just a cozy one-bedroom, but it radiated a kind of warmth I hadn't felt in a long time. Not just from the heat humming gently through the vents, but from the home itself. It felt lived in, cared for. The air smelled like cinnamon, lemon polish, and something floral, maybe lavender. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with worn novels, old encyclopedias, and stacked crossword puzzles. A small record player sat near the window, spinning a quiet jazz tune that sounded like it belonged to a different decade. In the corner, curled up on a faded armchair, was a sleepy tabby cat, blinking slowly like he wasn't the least bit surprised to see a wet stranger standing in his living room. Mr. Jenkins didn't make a fuss. He didn't apologize for the mess, not that there was any. He didn't fill the silence with small talk. He just handed me a towel, nodded toward a wooden dining chair, and said, "Sit. I'll get some tea going." I wiped off my face and hair as best I could. I was soaked, still clutching a dented can of soup like a lifeline. My socks made that embarrassing squish-squish sound with every shift in my seat. But he didn't seem to notice. Or maybe he just didn't care. When he returned, he set 2 mismatched mugs on the table. "Chamomile. Hope that's okay. No sugar, just honey." I nodded. "It's perfect," I said, though my voice came out softer than I expected. For the first few minutes, we didn't say much. The clink of mugs, the rain tapping on the windows, the faint hum of the jazz record filled the silence. And yet, it wasn't awkward. In fact, it was the most peaceful moment I'd had in weeks. There's something deeply comforting about being offered space without pressure. About being invited to exist, exactly as you are, no need to perform or explain. That's what Mr. Jenkins gave me that evening. A pause, a breath, a reminder that sometimes, the kindest thing someone can do is simply be there, and say nothing at all. After a while, as the tea warmed my hands and my soaked clothes began to dry, Mr. Jenkins finally broke the silence. "You remind me of my granddaughter," he said quietly, as if the thought had been sitting with him for a while. I looked up, surprised. "Really?" He nodded, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "She used to live a few towns over. Came by every Sunday with bagels. Played cards with me. Talked about work and life like I was part of her world." He paused for a moment, eyes drifting toward a photo on a nearby shelf. In it, he and a young woman stood side by side in the sun, both smiling like the moment had been perfect. The kind of smile that freezes time. "She moved out west last year," he continued. "San Diego. Got a job offer too good to pass up. I was proud of her, still am. But, we talk less now. You know how life gets." I nodded, understanding more than I expected. He looked back at me, those calm eyes warm but tired. "You've got the same look she did when she first started her career. Always rushing, always tired, like the world's moving too fast and you're just trying to keep up." I didn't know what to say. He saw me more clearly than I saw myself. Then he added, "That's why I've been keeping an eye out." That surprised me. "What do you mean?" He chuckled softly. "Not in a weird way, don't worry. I just noticed. The late nights. The mornings when you leave with mismatched socks. The days you come home looking like the weight of the world's on your back." My face must have turned a shade redder than the tea. I laughed nervously. I didn't think anyone noticed. He took a sip, then said simply, "People notice. The good ones just don't always say anything." That hit deeper than I expected. Because in that moment, I realized how much I'd been craving this acknowledgement. Connection. A reminder that someone saw me, even in the quiet, messy parts of life. And somehow, this man I barely knew was the one giving it to me. That night, after finishing our tea and letting the quiet moments stretch naturally between us, I walked back to my apartment feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time, seen. But it wasn't until a few days later that I started noticing the full weight of what Mr. Jenkins had said and done. He'd mentioned he'd been keeping an eye out, but the more I thought about it, the more pieces began to click into place. I remembered how, during the first big snowstorm last winter, my walkway was somehow already shoveled before I even left for work. I'd assumed it was a building maintenance guy or a kind neighbor I'd never meet. But now, I knew. At Christmas time, a small bag of cookies had been left on my doorstep. No note. I'd assumed it was from a coworker or maybe a wrong door delivery. But thinking back now, they had that same homemade smell I'd noticed in Mr. Jenkins's apartment. And the hallway lights? Always working, even when the building's electricity flickered in storms? I remembered seeing him in the stairwell once, screwdriver in hand, quietly checking the fuse box while others complained. He never made a show of it. Never knocked on doors or sought attention. Mr. Jenkins just did things. Little things. Quiet things. Things that made people's lives a little easier. Mine included. It was invisible kindness. Effort given freely, without expectation, without needing thanks. And I'd missed it. All of it. We spend so much time rushing, surviving, keeping our heads down. We miss the people around us who are helping in small ways. Showing up when no one asks them to. People like Mr. Jenkins who don't need credit to care. And the truth is, those small acts matter. They stack up. They soften hard days. They make lonely places feel a little more like home. I had lived just a few feet away from that kindness for months and never truly noticed. Until the rain forced me to slow down. Until the paper bag ripped. Until he walked toward me, umbrella in hand, with no judgment, just warmth. That was the day I began to understand. Kindness doesn't always arrive with fanfare. Sometimes, it arrives in silence. After that rainy night and the quiet kindness of Mr. Jenkins, something inside me shifted. It was subtle at first, like a seed planted deep beneath the surface, waiting to grow. Before meeting him, I'd been the kind of person who kept my head down, focused only on my own worries, rushing through my days like a blur. I believed that people were too busy to notice each other, that kindness was something rare and complicated. I was skeptical that a stranger's simple act could have any lasting meaning. But Mr. Jenkins proved me wrong. His small gestures, shoveling my walkway before snowstorms, leaving cookies at my door, making sure the hallway lights worked, showed me that kindness doesn't need to be grand or dramatic to matter. It's the quiet, steady things that make the biggest difference. Inspired by him, I started trying to notice the people around me. I began greeting my neighbors with more than just a nod. I made a point to hold doors open, help carry groceries, and check in with people who seemed lonely or overwhelmed. At first, it felt awkward. I wasn't used to slowing down and paying attention. But with every smile I got back, every thank you, I felt a warmth growing inside me. Kindness became a habit, not a chore. Slowly, the building that once felt like a collection of strangers became a community. Neighbors I'd never spoken to started chatting. The woman down the hall invited me over for coffee. The man on the third floor returned a favor by helping me fix a broken light. It wasn't just about helping others. It was about changing how I saw the world and my place in it. Mr. Jenkins showed me that kindness is a choice we make every day. It's not about perfection or grand gestures. It's about being present, about noticing when someone needs a hand, about giving without expecting anything in return. That shift in perspective made me feel more connected, more alive. It gave me hope that even small acts could ripple outward and create something bigger. And for that, I'll always be grateful. Weeks passed, and the quiet friendship between Mr. Jenkins and me grew in its own gentle way. We shared cups of tea, exchanged stories, and sometimes just sat in peaceful silence. It wasn't a loud or flashy friendship, but it was real. Then one day, I knocked on his door as usual. No answer. I knocked again. Still nothing. I tried the handle, but it was locked. I felt a knot in my stomach. Neighbors said they hadn't seen him in days. The little warmth and presence that had been a comforting constant seemed to have vanished overnight. Days went by without news. Then the building manager posted a notice on the bulletin board. Mr. Jenkins had passed away peacefully in his sleep. I stood there, stunned. The man who had quietly cared for me, who had given so much without asking for anything in return, was gone. His apartment felt emptier than ever. The jazz records stopped playing. Toby, his tabby cat, was taken in by another neighbor. The soft hum of his presence was gone. But what remained was the imprint of his kindness, the lessons he'd taught me without saying much. His example stayed with me, a reminder of what it means to care quietly and consistently. That loss hit me harder than I expected. It felt like losing a part of my own sense of safety and warmth. But it also made me realize how precious his kindness had been, a rare gift in a world that often feels too busy to notice. In his absence, I felt a responsibility to carry forward the legacy he'd left behind. Because sometimes, the greatest impact someone can have isn't in loud words or grand actions, but in small, steady kindnesses that change lives quietly, one day at a time. After Mr. Jenkins passed away, I felt a deep urge to keep his spirit alive, not through words or ceremonies, but through actions. His kindness had changed me, and I realized that the best way to honor him was by passing that kindness on. I began to notice my neighbors more than ever. The single mom juggling groceries and kids. The elderly couple who struggled with stairs. The college student who always seemed overwhelmed with exams. Simple things. Holding a door, offering a smile, helping carry bags, became my way of saying, "I see you. You're not alone." At first, it was awkward. I wasn't used to reaching out. But every time someone smiled back or said thank you, I felt the same warmth Mr. Jenkins had given me that rainy day. It was a small light in the ordinary moments. I found that kindness has a ripple effect. One small act often sparked another. The woman I helped with her groceries started checking in on the older neighbor. The college student I encouraged began volunteering at a local shelter. It felt like a quiet community was building. One gesture at a time. Mr. Jenkins's example taught me that you don't need to change the whole world to make a difference. Sometimes, the greatest impact comes from showing up for the people right next to you. Now, whenever I see someone struggling or lonely, I think about that rainy day and the man who stood with an umbrella in the storm. I try to be that person for others, the quiet helper, the one who cares without needing applause. Because kindness isn't about grand gestures or recognition. It's about presence, empathy, and the courage to care. And as long as we keep passing it on, kindness has the power to change lives, one small moment at a time. Looking back on everything, I realize that my experience with Mr. Jenkins taught me one of life's simplest but most powerful lessons. Kindness is not about grand gestures or heroic acts. It's about the small, consistent choices we make every day. In a world that often feels rushed, indifferent, or disconnected, kindness can be the thread that weaves us together. It can be the quiet umbrella in the storm, shielding someone from the rain when they least expect it. Mr. Jenkins didn't have to notice me, let alone help me. He wasn't looking for recognition or thanks. He just chose to be present, to care, to act. That changed everything. Since then, I've understood that kindness is a form of courage. The courage to see beyond ourselves, to step into someone else's shoes, and to offer support without conditions. It's about breaking down walls of isolation and loneliness. And the most beautiful part? It doesn't cost anything but a little time and attention. The ripple effect is real. One small act can inspire another. One smile can brighten a day. One word of encouragement can change a life. I share this story because I want you to know that kindness matters. Your kindness matters. Even when it feels small or invisible, it is never wasted. Every day, we have the opportunity to be someone's Mr. Jenkins. To be the reason someone feels seen, cared for, or less alone. So the next time you see a stranger struggling, a neighbor needing help, or a friend going through a tough time, remember this story. Remember that kindness, no matter how quiet, has the power to change lives. And maybe, just maybe, it will change yours too. So if this story meant something to you, or reminded you of someone who's made a quiet difference in your life, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Real, raw, and rooted in the everyday moments that make us human. And if you think someone you know needs a little reminder that kindness still exists in the world, go ahead and share this video with them. Thanks for watching, and as always, be kind, stay open, and never underestimate the power of one small act of care. I'll see you in the next story.